All righty, everybody. Happy Friday. So in my ever-ending, ongoing struggle to try and come up with different things week to week, I'm not so much a struggle, but since last week we did rocks, figure, and water, I thought we'd do something with maybe a piece of architecture in it, some foliage and some distant hills. And so I picked this little, I was actually painting one day out in this region and took some photos, and always thought I'd do something with them and had never done anything, but I thought, what the heck, let's do a demo on it. Okay. So we're gonna start now. I have an 18 by 24 piece of toned canvas. It's toned, so for example, that's white. So you can see where the value range is. It's probably about a number 3 or 4 in terms of a gray. So we're going to kind of come in with the angle. I want to lower it. I don't like all that space. So I'm going to make it more kind of this direction. Keep a subtle angle in it like this. And one of the things that I liked about this angle, a little bit of an angle, 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 straight, angle. I also, let me tell you some other things I did like. I'll tell you the one thing I don't like. I like this road coming from here. I'm going to clarify it down in here, and it picks up and comes over, kind of comes over and down and around there. I don't think I'm going to show it beyond that. This bothers me, the straight line. It's a road, comes off this. So what I'm going to do to help this is I'm going to take one of these trees and bring it in front of that road. So I break that line a little bit. Okay. That's my thinking. So let's go for it.
Over your palette?
Yeah, I'll go with my palette in a second. Let me get the drawing down. I made a mark. That's a midpoint. That's a midpoint. So it gives me a rough idea because I'm going to change things, but I kind of want things in a similar position. I've already changed this, brought this down lower. So I want things in a similar position, which is going to make the part of this architecture about here. And the roof line is going to probably, I want to go get that angle. So what I'm doing, I'm going to show you this way, but I'm actually taking and I'm finding that angle and I'm moving it over. And if I'm on location, I find the angle by closing one eye, pretending it's a piece of glass, resting my brush on it and moving it over. And once I have that angle, then I will basically kind of put it in there. All right. About here. So we're going to bring the roof line down at about this point. We want the same. Architecture is the one area, much the same as figures, where your drawing really does need to be accurate. Or I should say, particularly in architecture, your perspective. You can always shorten a house, make it longer, do things such as that. But generally, you want it to be relatively accurate. So it disappears at this point, but it looks like this edge is almost straight up going back perspectively, kind of like that. And we see very little of the roof line. It's just a little bit. We get a stack up, and I'm going to talk about analyzing the light source in a second. So once we kind of have that in there, there's a water tower off to the right, which I do like. I like the difference in shape. The fact that this is one shape, this is a different type of a shape. So I appreciate that very much. And it's one of the things that I will look for when I'm painting. One of the choices that you're going to make. So I probably have this up a little too high. Doesn't bother me too much. I'm going to bring this way, and there's a window hidden back in here. And then there's a piece of foliage that comes up this way over the roof line and maybe down a little. It isn't in front of it, but I'm going to make it a little in front of that. So, all right, there's some man-made elements. This is going to be down about here. Some man-made elements, meaning like a fence, a little tree back in here. This line tends to be a little lower. I'm going to change that in a second. Before I do that, I'm going to kind of get this tree shape in. And then I love this break right here. I really like that. It's one of the reasons I chose this. I like that little break of land back there. And I think I might, let's see, get this down about here. These are kind of scrub trees. All right. And over to the left of it, we've got another piece of foliage. We've got some reddish foliage back here. Another one over about here. You map these in, as I call it. This is pretty much the way I'd work on location, or in the studio for that matter. I really wouldn't draw much tighter. I might be a little bit more, I might go a little slower in placement, but literally as far as refinement, no, I wouldn't probably refine it any more than I'm doing right now. And there was a little, from this tree right here, there's a little straight, I kind of like that straight tree there, right there. And then a little bit of we get some nice scale change here. We get this other house back, about in here. All right, but there, hidden back behind this big old tree. So we get some nice spatial breakups, which is one of the things you always kind of want to look at when you're doing landscapes. You want to look at composition. Composition has a lot to do with the way the space is being broken up. So this hill, we want a little lower, maybe about here, coming down about here. And then we've got this little dark. Now I'm going to create more depth in this if I can by not making this quite as dark back here. So we're going to bring it back here about there, little trees. Scale. It's the other way you create depth. Scale. Smaller trees back here, bigger in the foreground. These are actually bigger trees back here. It's just that because they're way back there, they're quite a bit smaller. So we're there. Now we're going to bring in the hill and where the other hill kind of overlaps, it comes in about here. That looks pretty good. There's going to be a road back here, and then there's mountains back behind. So I'm giving it a little bit more sky because I gave it less foreground, which is fine with me. I don't want a lot of sky, but a little bit isn't going to hurt at all. Okay, so I kind of have things mapped out, as I like to say it. I don't know if other artists use that term. I do. And I'm going to grab, I don't know, I was going to grab this brush, but I think I'm going to grab one of my little gesso brushes, just because I feel comfortable always starting with that. And we're going to start with some white. The sky, slightly blue, a little bit of blue, not a lot, a little bit. It's very light, very light. Maybe some Naples or, and I'll give you my palette as we start talking about this. So I have a little bit of unbleached titanium, which I don't know if I'm going to be using, but I have it. I laid it out anyway. Some titanium white, Naples yellow, not Naples yellow light this time, just Naples yellow. And it's a Gamblin Naples, so it's a little bit of a darker Naples. Yellow ochre, I always have yellow ochre, whether I'm doing bigger, whether I'm doing, for me, it's one of the go-to colors that I use. It's one of those colors that I tend to use in almost every painting. I have a cad yellow hue laid out. I only have one red, and it's a alizarin crimson. I saw no need. If you guys look at this, you probably see what I mean. See, I really don't see a need for another red. So alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, sap green. I went back to my old standby asphaltum instead of umber. I just found a big tube that I had, and I thought, hey, I'm going to go back to asphaltum. And I'll switch off like that sometimes. And I've added, by the way, a little bit more Naples yellow down as the sky meets the hills. Okay, and last but not least, there's a color that I absolutely love. I haven't used it for a long time. I was reorganizing a lot of my supplies, and ran across it. I said, man, why haven't I been using that? It's a color I use more for landscape than I do for figurative work, but it's called Mars Violet Deep. It's a great color. It looks very much like what is it? You guys can see it. It looks very much like a burnt sienna, but when you tint it, it goes more dead and a little bit more towards the violets. So let's kind of get the overall mass of those mountains. Quite blue compared to the rest of the piece, but not a bright blue. So ultramarine, I'm going to violet it down a little bit with probably the alizarin, but I might just grab some of my color I was just talking about, the Mars Violet Deep. And let's see what we got here. It looks okay. Might want to go a touch lighter. Let's see. Let's start with that. And we just kind of block it in. Everything is a block in. You have two ways when you block in, and I haven't talked about it. There's one way, which is the way I generally paint, which I generally do a lot of overlapping of edges. But there's another way where you don't overlap quite because you won't contaminate your paint. And then you come back later and do whatever meeting of the, but I like to kind of get little kind of interesting edges. And that's why I like to overlap. You see why I like this brush for my beginning, because I can really pop in big areas quickly. That's the main reason. And I can get kind of interesting, kind of those real free looking edges more so than I can with my other brushes. But that's pretty good. As just stood back, it feels a little dark. It's a little darker than I anticipated, but I think it'll work. So, you know, I've mentioned you constantly should assess your painting as you're working on it. And my assessment is I'm probably a little darker than I wanted to be, but I'll keep that in my head because as I progress, I may find that I'm not as dark. You know, I'm relating it strictly to this underpainted color too. So we're going to start with the greens in the background, the kind of yellow greens. It's a muted yellow green. So white is going to give me the value, a little bit of a cad yellow, a little bit of maybe a Naples, or I could put ochre, either one. And then maybe a little sap. That feels pretty good, almost right there. I'm going to bring a little bit more warmth. Look at that. I'm pretty close. One of the things I want to mention, the reason I'm going to mention this is I was just painting with my class, landscape class at the academy. I was painting last Tuesday, and I noticed a few people they're sitting there and they're working very diligently and hard, and they're working very hard to get that color. But somehow they were not recognizing that their value was off. And so they spent the whole time and get the whole thing laid in and then realize, oh, my values, or they didn't realize, I'd go over and realize for them, my value's off. And one of the ways you can adjust that is once you put a tone down next to another tone, step back about 8 to 10 feet, depending on your scale, and take a look and see how that sets up. Does it look similar? Am I getting enough snap out of it, punch? Now you might, the other occasion that I've seen happen is people go too far with it. They get too much contrast. So it's a little bit of one that you have to be careful of, and then the other. Now that very similar color, same color, maybe a little bit more green in it, but it's almost the same color. So I just add a little green, little ochre to the same color, and we're going to bring it down here, right down in here. And then we're going to get this darker hill in, and this darker hill, which is this. So I'm going to add more green to that color, more ochre. I added too much green. And the ochre will keep it from getting too intense, and yet still it'll keep it in that green family. So let's look at that. That actually feels pretty good. I'm probably not as dark as I want to be, but it's not too bad.
So Lynn wants to know, so when you overlap your edges, you have no edges? It's blended?
No. When you overlap your edges, you still get, you don't want it to blend, but you can create interesting edge characteristics like feeling of trees. You absolutely don't blend it. In fact, I'm glad you asked that, because if I gave that impression, I messed up. I don't want you guys. You put that stroke down so you get the contrast. Now there, I darkened. You can see it right back in here, and I just darkened it with a little earth tone. Go back to the green. There we go. Let's just take it right there. Oh, had a little too much brown in it. By brown, I meant asphaltum in this case. It would be burnt umber if using burnt umber. And then it gets a little lighter up here. So I just added a little bit more yellow. Too much yellow, not enough white. Okay, we'll get that in there. It's very similar to the sky value. And it comes down about to here. It gets a little greener. I've gone a little too golden with my green. So I added more white, a little bit more sap to the same color I was just using. And this should take it, you can see how it goes greener now. So you can see is I've already got a pretty good array of greens going. Green is generally has been designated by many artists is one of the more difficult colors to paint with, because most your tendencies are almost always is to oversaturate the green. Not sure why, but it is. But I threw some Mars Violet into it and it just mucked up the whole color. So more white, green, ochre into that. Mars Violet. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, I still end up with similar color. Good. A little darker right in that one region. So I took a little bit more green and Mars Violet to that color. And we'll just kind of, oh, I see some blue now that I look at. I didn't notice that. So I am kind of, but the question came up earlier. I am kind of blending now, by the way. But you know, I'm not sitting there and working the heck out of it. When I say blend, a lot of people, when I say blend, people think you do this like that. You don't. You try and blend simply with effort, with less effort. The more effort you put into it, the more that blend can get muddy. If you need to later, you can always go back and enhance that softness. But in the beginning, try not to be too soft. So abstractly, if I stand back, it reads, I'm a little too warm right there. I can see it right now. As soon as I stood back, I noticed it. Only because I wasn't paying real close attention. So I took some more yellow and green and white, and I'm just going over that. Okay, so we're going to leave it alone for a second, because if I'm a little off, I don't care. If I'm way off, I care. So we're going to go with a little bit of a brighter green down here, right in this region right here. Right, there's a road, it looks like. So I just scrape with my brush. That's a drawing line more than anything. And a little bit right here. So I might as well do it. Well, I've got that tone on my brush. Let's put it in there, whether it's right or wrong. Okay, so now I'm going to paint this hill. And I'm looking at the color and the value. It's more yellow in it, a little bit more white. I can feel the paint is getting a little sticky, which means it needs more medium. Let me see what this looks like. Pretty good. The medium really helped. Comes from about here. Oh yeah, I should have put that medium in before. That really did help. Medium is I have a jar here with a combination of safflower oil, and I think there's a little bit of liquid solvent-free gel in it. A few things like that. I could just be using the plain old solvent-free gel. You have to play with mediums, everybody. You can't, don't assume, as I have done, don't assume you found the right medium. Okay. And because every now and then you're going to switch off and you're going to go, geez, why haven't I been using that? That really works well. So little discovery information. And it goes a little lighter as it moves to the right. So what I did is I picked up a little yellow and a little Naples. And let's see if this is going to work. It may not be white enough. Not too bad. And then it's more of that tone. Then as it moves down, gets a little bit more green in it. Key is a little bit. There it is. I can see right now I can take some Naples and some white into that color, and right about here you can get quite a bit. I'm going to go lighter still, more white, not so much Naples. There we go. Let's just put that a little bit as it goes behind, a little bit back in here. I'm just barely grazing that paint on. I'm not laying it on heavy. A little lighter here. Same color, just a lot more Naples and white into that same yellow green I was using there. And the continuity. You can't put it here and not have it be also here. Okay, so now it feels like that tone goes behind. I can probably find a little bit of that behind these trees up in here too. As long as I've got the color on, if you notice it, do it. One thing I'm happy about it is I'm not over fussing it right now. Hate it when I do that. Okay, there's those trees. Comes down. Now I want to get this little light plane in, which is white, more white, maybe a little bit more Naples, mixed back into that green I was using. And then let's try it right here. That's really light, but it might work. It's going to go up here, down. I'm going to bring a little ochre into it because I see it get a little subtle color change as it moves in. And let's leave it at that. Let's not put a lot more into it than that. So we're getting plain kind of these surface changes. So let's look to see where we're at time-wise. Just a little over 20 minutes into it, which is fine. I say that, and then at the end I panic, huh? Always. You never have enough time. No matter how much time you have, you never have enough time. You always wish you had more time. That's how I am, at least. Okay. Now I'm going to go with this dark, and it's really light, gets darker. It's got a fade of warm down here. I don't know whether I'm going to play with that or not, but right now I'm going to put that big, simple plane in. Here's why. If I'm painting on location, or I'm painting like I am now with the time frame, I know I'm not going to have time to go back and hit all the super subtle undulations. So why not get as much of it in initially as I can? So there's that kind of overall base green. Not as light as it's going to be up here. That's why I've only gone up so far. And I'm scumbling it in a way where some of that background color, warm color, is coming through. It's actually helping. Okay, I ran out of green, so I'm just mixing up more, same color, maybe a little off. It is a little off. That's okay. Move it in. Move it right into the rest of the color. What's happening is I need more medium in it. See how it's more yellow this time? I don't care because I'm working it all together. So when you talk about blending, this is how initially in the beginning I would blend. Almost a rub. And I want it to go lighter.
I think Lynn was referring to edges before.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Yeah, I realize you probably were referring to edges more than you were. So it's pretty light here. Probably lighter than I want, but let's start it this way. That's real dry. You can see, do you notice that stroke that I put down? Look at how dry that is. Now, I just added medium to that same paint. Now watch this stroke. See the difference between that stroke and that stroke? That's by adding medium, you get that. And now I can take it, push that into that color, and let the edges kind of work together. So we're going to put it brighter up here. I don't want it all the way up where I drew that line because I was lowering it. And I want to use my brush in as many directions, and I don't want to create strictly stripes or stripes. I want to go all use the direction of the brush to help indicate the character of the ground, not the detail of the ground. We're not painting detail. Because you start painting detail, you're actually painting blades of grass. We're not, we're just getting a feeling of undulation, of that kind of undulation that goes on right at that point. We're gonna go a little bit, mix a little more green into it, bring it up just a touch higher. Right about there. And take that background plane. Okay. So we kind of have the greens and pretty much the overall surfaces of the, surfaces meaning fields, hills. So we have most of that laid in. At this point, now I'm going to start in on the foliage itself. Now I'm going to start with the back foliage. The reason I'm not going to do the mountains till the very end. I'm going to start in with that foliage, but I don't want that foliage anywhere near as dark as it is now. As I look at it, that tone right there is very similar to that tone. I'm going to change that. I'm going to paint background dark of the tree lighter than the foreground dark of the tree, simply to give it more air, to create air. You might have heard certain artists talking about air in a painting. I know David LaFell talks about it a lot, and he talks about it just in a still life, which is, this is the distant space. So that's probably about as dark as I'm going to go. It may look dark now, but I can tell on my palette it's nowhere near as dark. And I want to get a nice edge. So I am concerned about those edges now. And we're going to go here. And it looks like it could stand to have a little bit more green in it, but I don't want it darker. So as I add green, I'm also adding enough light to keep it on the light side. And if I make too many strokes, what happens is I pick up the pigment that's already down there, and as I pick it up, I contaminate this color. I make it muddy. I make it so I know I can get a few strokes out of it without picking up too much of that pigment. And I'm going to do the same, add a little bit of blue to it, but blue is going to darken it. So I'm adding, as I added the blue, I also added Naples, and we're going to paint this dark area in right here. Now it looks really dark back there. I don't want it anywhere near as dark. That looks dark compared to the painting. I just want to show you so you can all see what I'm referring to when I say dark. Here is a nice dark that I can use in the foreground trees. I'm going to put it back here just so you can see how light this is. So watch. Quite a bit darker, isn't it? I'm not going to leave that, by the way. I just put that there to show you the value that I'm dealing with now. Color is very important. Don't get me wrong, but that the value that I have there is more important than the color. If you can't decide what color to make something, truthfully, if you worry about it, because I've talked to too many young artists, and they'll say, "Oh, does that have a lot of purple in it?" Well, one person might see more purple, but maybe I see more gray. And so think of all your colors initially being forms of grays. I've got so many lovers of Joaquin Sorolla, and they automatically, most people, myself included, by the way, and they all, everybody thinks of Joaquin Sorolla as the most beautiful color, and which it is, but it's not bright color. It's not bright color. There may be a few bright colors in right at the end, but it's generally very comfortable color, and it's more grays than it is. So I say, keep your paintings a little bit more on the gray side, or I'm using the word gray. I just mean not bright color when I say gray. And then, once that's color and value, by the way. So we could talk about all paintings being a combination of drawing, color, value, and edges. And what the edges do is the edges give you characteristics. Color and value gives you readability. Maybe a little bit of characteristics too, but more readability. That's how you create form more with value. Okay, let's make a little subtle change right up in here. I started it, but I didn't go far enough with it. So I just lightened the color I had on my brush. Whoa, God, see that? That's that Mars Violet, went too strong. The best thing to do is to watch any instructor or any demonstrator make mistakes and then watch how they get out of them. Simply because that's what you're going to do. And sometimes the mistakes you make, I know I've mentioned this before, can add a little character that you otherwise would not probably have put into your painting. Of course, sometimes it can totally screw it up too. I see a warm, and I'm looking at that road, which kind of goes this way. Wow. Too much. I thought I had milked that out, but I didn't. It's too strong. We don't want anything that's strong back here, because it's going to pop out of the whole painting. That looks like it's shaping up pretty well. Too much dark right in here. So we'll bring more of the light kind of yellow green. And I have such a myriad of colors mixed up on my palette that I can pick and choose and go back and soften a color. Now I'm standing back. I feel pretty good about that. It feels okay. Or as I like to always say, I can live with it. May want to change it later, but for right now, I'm saying it's okay. Nothing is done until you say it's done. As you guys paint, nothing is done. You may think it's done, and then an hour later, you may realize I have to change it. Now, that's an important thing to realize. There's a lot of people, they like something so much. I've done this myself. That's what I'm going to tell you. You like something so much that you don't want to change it. Mistake. In other words, I like that so much, I don't want to, but it isn't working in the grand scheme of things. Until I get all this laid in, I don't really know how things are working. I think I know, but I don't really know. So I'm looking for that dark, not quite as dark as I can go. So I know I can go darker. It's a combination of a little bit of white, green, and asphalt. And I want some nice edges. So look at that. That's where you concern yourself with that. That's not a blend, but it's not a crisp edge. And those edges give you the different characteristics. What do I mean by characteristics? Okay. Rocks have a different characteristic than a field, right? Than a tree. A eucalyptus tree has got a different characteristic than a palm tree. And so on and so forth. We can go on with the types of trees. We can also go on with a cloud in the sky has got a different effect and look than a nice blue, crisp sky. So how do you achieve that? Color, value, and edges. Edges become, as you become more adept, more comfortable with color and value, edges will become more of your focus. And then probably, as a good friend of mine likes to refer to it, surface quality. The surface quality of your paint. Is it thick? Does it feel like paint? Does it feel like you just kind of stained that canvas? Or does it feel like it's really paint? And that's one of the things you really can't tell when you look at art in books. You got to see art. You got to see originals. I went and saw the Sargent show in San Francisco, Legion of Honor, about a week ago, 3 weeks ago. First day it opened, whatever it was. And I'll tell you, every time I see a great show of great art, whether it's a contemporary person or whether it's, a master from the past, I just want to go paint. I realize some things that I haven't done that I would like to employ, and it's awakening. So anybody that can, go see a show. I like to try and climb into the artist's head. Sounds terrible, doesn't it? Just simply because I try and figure out what they're thinking. That's one of the reasons that I talk while I paint, when I demonstrate, when I do any sort of live painting for anybody. I talk because I figure everybody, if you're like me, you probably have questions, and you maybe don't ask them. And so I anticipate questions pretty much and try and tell you at least where my head is at. I like to tell you when I do something really crummy, when I do something and I think it looks good, and when I think the values are wrong, when I think my edge is ugly. My edge has always been ugly. Another thing that I want to, and I know I've said this before, there's another field back here, which I haven't gotten into. I can just see. Let me get that base tree. There's another tree behind this little guy. Ooh, that's kind of a good and bad edge both. And I got to bring more light down. And then we got the nice dark tree, which comes up about in here. It's much firmer. And then you've got this. These are all, I don't want it quite that dark, but right about here is this other tree. Well, kind of like some of the edges I'm getting there. I like that edge. Okay, I just stepped back. I'm taking a sip of my iced coffee. I'm even telling you what the hell I'm drinking. I'm taking a sip of my iced coffee as I step back. It looks okay. I like my composition better than my photo. Colors and values basically are fine. At least at present. That's how I feel. I might change my mind, as I told you guys. I might, as I get closer, I might go, geez, I got to darken that, lighten that. So don't feel like what you've done is right. But also, I contradict myself a lot here, don't I? But also, don't beat yourself up and say, oh, I can't get it. I'm wrong. The first thing to ask yourself is it reading? How does it look compared to what I'm painting, compared to what I'm looking at? How does it look? And what you do that primarily to see how, if you've done anything radically wrong, because sometimes you want to change what you're painting a little bit. So I don't get me wrong with that. Like I changed this a little bit, but basically this reads kind of like that reads. So the light and dark pattern and the basic coloration, those two things, the light and dark pattern and that basic coloration are beginning to work pretty well. Okay, I want to go a little warmer. So I'm actually use some of my Mars Violet. And we're going to go kind of just scribble it back in here. It gets real confusing back in here, I can tell. So I'm not going to try and overanalyze it. I'm just going to trust myself, put it in the way I think it looks, and adjust it later. Oh, I don't like that edge at all. Oh, that's not a bad edge. And it's darker as it comes down here pretty dark. Now let's go with the lower part, right down here in the bottom of this house. And it comes up here, and then it kind of fades right into this bush. And there's some light edges on it. So I'm kind of leaving where the light edges might be. You know, run things together initially if you have to, rather than over define things. Make things kind of one thing go into another if you have to. So I'm going to take that same color, actually I'm going to go a little darker. There's still white in this, by the way. But I'm going to go right here at the roof line. And now I'm going to look at what's happening with the light. Where is the light coming from? Let me point out some, well, we see a bright light top, so we know it's up high. I also see a shadow on the roof from this outlet, this pipe. I see a shadow cast right here. That tells me the light is coming from here, up above, over to the left. All right. Now that I know that, I keep that in the back of my head. That's a little piece of information that might come in handy. Okay. It will come in handy, I should say. It's not, not might. And then we've got a nice dark area right before that window right there. Okay. And the whole front of this tank is pretty darn dark. So what you end up with initially, if you get your lay-in done properly, what I should end up with is a loose, for lack of a better word, indication of what I'm going to end up painting. Everything is there, but it's not neat at this particular point. It's kind of, it has an interesting look, but it's almost like I told an abstract artist to paint the scene. Okay, because it kind of has some of that feel. So now let's start with a few of the lights. I'm going to do one thing first. I'm showing too much of the roof. So I went back to this color, which I had mixed up. I don't care if it's exactly anyway, but we went right about here. There's a few little darks in here. Okay, so I'm going to switch off from this brush for a little bit here. I'm going to go and I'm going to pick up, what is this, looks like a number 8. And I'm going to lay in this part of the house, that part of it right here. Now, I'm only going to bring it down to about here because I want to leave a little bit of a light edge. So what color is that? It's very gray. It's a gray brown. If I'm going to, I start with white, asphaltum, and blue. That will give me a nice gray look. And I'm going to test it. That looks about right. Once again, I hit it on the first try, which scares me. It's probably wrong then. Just rake it across. If you don't see it getting, okay, now I just stood back. It feels okay. I need to bring it dark down further. I can see that right now. So I just picked up a dark with the same brush and brought it down further. And we get a little bit more of a shadow right there. Okay, I don't want to go a lot further right now. You know why?
Why?
Because it feels right. If I fuss with it, I'll probably mess it up. So I'm going to look at the top of the roof. This is definitely lighter and warmer than this. How light? It's not this light, but it's lighter and warmer. So I'm going to take, again, white, but take asphaltum. Those two colors might do it. That feels a little yellow for me. I could be wrong. So let's see. I want to go a little bit darker. So I throw a little more asphalt in it. Now the asphaltum makes it quite red, so every now and then I'll pop a little blue in, although it does feel pretty red. I'm going to actually add a little Mars Violet to it. Mars Violet Deep. Crap, I don't realize how strong that stuff is, but I kind of like it. There, we're going to go with that. And just pretend like I'm right. Or who's the guy on Saturday night that used to go, yeah, that's the way, yeah. That's just, okay, so we're going to do the top part of the roof, which the angle is kind of right there. So I'm just using the angle of the brush. And we're just going to pull it down. And now we've got the roof in there. Now I haven't put the other thing in. The other side of it, light's coming from over here. So this edge, which we're getting a little bit of light on, is really light. It's as closest. This is almost as light as that and that. Very, very light. So let's leave this alone. Assume it's right, leave it alone. Go back to a brush like this. And we will put that pipe in right there. Want to be a little careful in some of these. And then it's casting a shadow, which is bluer. So I just took the brown that I had on the brush, added a little blue to it, and the shadow looks like it goes pretty much the length of the roof. For that, I need a little bit of medium. Okay. That feels okay. Leave it alone. Feels fine. Don't keep fussing with it. Okay, let's go in with some of this stuff in here. Okay, some of these foliage areas, really hard to pick exactly the color. A lot of people want to see all the little leaves that make it up. Don't see them as a mass. That's pretty good. It's kind of just a gray green. Maybe it could have a little more yellow in it. I could throw a little ochre into that. Might not hurt it. Has a little bit of red now and there, and that's just foliage. Foliage is going to change colors. It's never going to be a color. It's always going to have variations. So you want to get those variations. That's why mix up a new color. Stepping back, it's about right. That's all we can say right now. It's about right. Okay, let's keep moving over. We're going from here. I'm going to go back. A little bit of red up in here. So I'm going to go back to my Mars. And I could use alizarin, but let's see what this looks like. I think that's a little too strong. So I threw a little ochre into it. Let's see what happens. Nope, not quite. I'm going to take alizarin, ochre, and a little touch of white to that color. I've really pushed it. Probably more than I need to, but I'm going to try it anyway. Let's try it one more time. Yeah, I like that better. Top, the light is on the top once again. So you're not going to get that kind of color down in here. You're going to get it up and it's going to dissipate as it goes down. It goes behind the house a little bit right here. And a little bit down in there. Okay. Stepping back, I like the color variation. It's okay. This could go a little lighter, but I'm not going to mess with it right now. I know that. So with what I did here, I need to do that back here. So I'm going back with kind of that dirty yellow green color that I was using. It may not be the same, but let's try it. Not quite, want a little more green into it. Just the way I lay my brush down is making the mark. Has nothing to do with really heavy duty painting. Okay, a little bit of light on the edge of this tree. Step back, okay. A little bit of light working its way down here. This blends back a little bit more. That has a little more brown in it now that I see it. I'm going to go back with some of the house color. Just put it back in here. And there's some colors back in here. I'm not going to worry about finishing that house up to the very end. That's almost the last thing I'm going to do. Okay, so got about 40, we're about halfway through. So I'm going to do another green plane. And it's this plane in front of this house right about here. It looks to be about right. Probably throw a little more yellow in it. It goes back behind part of the tree, and there's a tree. Okay. That feels pretty good. I'm probably going to need to bring this up higher. So I'm just going to take white to that color that I was just using. And we're going to go right. A little more Naples in it. Okay, leave it alone. It's shaping up. And I'm just trying to keep my pacing right. Okay, one thing I'm going to do is these areas back in here are vacant. They just are that background color. Part of this is really this tree that's just brushing up here. It's just got a lot of brush that comes up here. Works its way over. Back in here, a little bit of that too. And then I'm going to mix that color in with that yellow and just kind of bring it down in those areas where I think it needs it a little bit. On this part of this side of that tree, it needs it a little. Down in here, back here, that looks okay. A little bit of back in here. Okay, let's take a look. Looks okay. As I step back, this needs to be lighter. So again, I thought I had it right. Really important that you guys understand that just because you think you got it right doesn't mean it's right. And you might have to adjust something 30 times. Yet at the same time, you might hit it on the second try. As I stand back, that feels closer to what I see. Now, let's go into this tree a little bit. There's a little bit, I see some detail, some greens, but they're not green. They're kind of very gray. Some of it's right about here. Up too green. I just got to telling you, not too green. Every now, whoop, these are too light. And then a little darker. We see a little bit of brush in here. A little bit back in there. There we go. It's a little too strong there. So I went back with a darker color that I already had kind of mixed up. It's kind of just green and brown. So it's not a tremendously difficult color. And if I don't hit it exactly right, it's not going to make a huge difference. So, okay, let's go into this tree. That tree's got some really pretty colors. So I took ochre because it's warm and green, and we're going to take a look at where the light's coming from. So it's affecting this part of this tree. Now I'm going to throw some medium into that because I don't want it to blend into the color. I want it to lay on top. So that's pretty good. It's not bad. It's got this is the way I would want to build it anyway. I might want to end up stronger, but boy, this is exactly where I'd want to start as far as showing the feeling of that light that is affecting, and it's hitting the top plane right up in here, a little bit of the top, and just use that brush ever so lightly. maybe you see me use this brush a lot just because I can do things quicker. I might not be using it as much on a long painting. Okay, it's starting to have volume, which is making me feel a little more confident, right? So next thing I want to do, I want to get a little separation between the house, and that's not a lot of strong color, but there's a little bit of this hill right about here. That's probably a little stronger than I needed, but now I've got both sides of it. And down here, it's lighter and cleaner. So I'm going back with the Naples and the yellow and a little bit of green. And throw some white into it, and we will clean up that. Now I've created the shape of that tank. Okay, all I really need to do is hit the light on top of it. We need to go back. I need to leave myself enough time to go back into the mountains and the hills in the distance. But for right now, what do I think is going to be enough time for that? We'll work another 20 minutes on most of this stuff right in here, and then we'll go back. All right, so we got some nice light hitting right in on there, and then there's the window back behind. But that light, that window back behind is darker. So let's get that in there first. It's going to be right about there. A little bluer too. I made it a little bit bluer. But let's illuminate what's in front. Ochre, yellow, back into those greens that I was using. It's pretty light. Again, I want to build it up slower, but I know that in a quick painting, I don't have the time. So I have to kind of come pretty close to what that value changes. And I want to get a little bit more of a green flavor to it. So I just added a little green to the same color. And as we move it down, just let it kind of barely touch and make the mark. As it goes up, it gets a little warmer. There's another tree there. So what I did is I just took the same value and added a little bit of the brown into that color. So we'll come in here, just kind of stroke it down really gently. Really, I almost cannot feel it touch the canvas, just so you guys know. Now, it overlaps that house a little bit. I want it to. Even if it didn't, I would make it. And I think back behind, I'm going to brighten this a little bit more. Just a little bit on the top. Just once again, this brush, I almost don't even feel it touch the canvas. But what I'm getting is an illumination. I'm starting to get a little bit of separation and clarity. So let's get the top of the roof in, because I want to bring some. So we're going to I went to a number 6. White, just a touch of Naples to warm that white up, because it's a light roof. And what we're going to do is just kind of very clearly come in this way. And we'll pull it back. There we go. Nice edge. Bottom. Okay. That looks pretty good, except I want to get the tree to overlap it. So I'm going to go back, pick my big brush up right now, the dark green-brown mixture. And we're going to get that tree to come down over it. And over here, and it has a little light there as it overlaps right here. Not a lot, just a little bit. Okay. So that feels pretty good. While I've got that color, I'm going to take more medium. I took solvent-free gel this time. I'm going to take my arm and rest it here. And I'm going to hit the light on that roof at that point. Probably could have gone lighter. And I'm going to put some ochre into that and pop a little light back, get a little separation back in here. Really light right about here. And this gives me the side of that house. Now, I can see right now that I didn't make the lights, this part of the roof, light enough. So I took the color I was just using and I mixed it into the color I had for this, and I'm going to lighten this. I'm going to lighten a little bit more. Pretty good. A little bit more. So we're illuminating it. Like I said, I thought I was right. I wasn't. So the side of that, these are the little tiny finishes. So hopefully I'm not going to have to go back on this house a lot, except in this area. And the very top of that. So we start to get a little bit of believability. Now I can also take the dark. This is straight asphalt, by the way. Just clarify that, darken it a little bit. And if I want to punch this up a little, which I think I do, not a lot, just a little more white in it. Right about. There we go. It starts to give it a better feel. Also, I see a little bit of a dark right. Finding that. And then there's that little piece of, I don't know what that is up there, but I kind of like the light because that's what's casting this shadow, is that. Okay, so that's all we're going to do. While I'm up here, though, I'm going to put the light on this. So white and Naples, but mainly white and medium. And then we're going to come in, we're going to try and get that curvature. That's pretty good. See, what I see now is that I can be brighter here. As soon as I put that in there, I could see I could make that a lot brighter. Okay, let's hold on it. I don't want to do, there are some linear things in there, which I am going to put in, but not now. I want to get back into this area. Let's start, where are we at? I've got about a half an hour. Okay, let's get that road in, which is warm. And then I'll break it with the trees. The road comes from about here and goes over to here. Now it's much whiter in the back. I don't want it that white. Okay, all you got to do to make that work is take one of these trees, because I do see some trees there. Just bring a tree over, maybe two. Okay, so I just put them in front as opposed to behind. That's all. A little bit of light on the tree. I saw that right at the beginning. This one tree. A little bit of light on this tree. Just taken, it pretty much added white to the color I was using earlier. Little thing in the background, little warmer, really interesting, really, really interesting. So a little bit of warm. That's about right. I want to go behind the trees. come out. And there's a little bit of growth back there. Looks like there's a road up here too that goes, oh, it is. Interesting. I didn't see that before. That happens when I paint on location too. All of a sudden you get into it, you start looking at areas and go, whoa, I see continuity. That means the road comes from here. Comes down in there. And then I'm going to use my liner. First time, guys. I also see a little bit of a feeling of that road, this road sneaking back too light. I mean, not light enough, right about in here. A little lighter. See, now you feel like that road is, but let's get, put my finger down, that's why I got that. Okay, let's get this road as it comes this way, okay? So that is very white, a lot of maple, so it's very warm, a lot of medium, so it, as I put the stroke down, it's not going to blend. And the road is going to come from here, very careful. That's probably too light. It is, but I don't mind it. At least for a quick painting, I don't. I added a little bit more ochre to that color right now, just so you guys know. And it comes from here. That feels pretty good. It's probably a little stronger than I want, but it's okay. I'm going to put that back into that green color and get some. Don't want to work too long with this little tiny brush because I'll overpick it. Okay, so now let's take the concept of that. Let's bring that road as it goes down. It's going to go down. Actually, I want to make it go here. Okay. And then it's going to go a little. Oh, I see something I need to do. Need to separate these hills right here with this little bit of a dark back here. Too dark, but I'll brush it out. A little bit of a dark coming down in here. I don't want to get all these dark. That's way too contrasty for the rest of the painting. If we want to put a little bit of feeling of that, just don't put it in anywhere near as dark as it appears. So I just kind of indicated it that way. So we're going to take the same concept of the road. I'm going to go darker with a little bit more of a brown. And what I'm going to do is clean my finger so I don't, and I want that road to come from right here and work its way down to here. So I'm going to move it. I'm going to go from here down to here. Okay. And that's kind of the growth in between it, but we want to hit a little bit there. Okay. Now it's the light in. And I don't want it as, I want that more of that ochre color. I don't want it as white. But it's got to be really thin. So I'm going to grab, I don't have a ball stick. Yeah, I do. Because I'm getting picky. So I'm going to go right there. And I'm going to come a little bit lighter. So I added more white. I'm going to come down on this side of the road. Not light enough. I added more white to the same color. There we go. Probably a little too strong. Here's one of the tracks. And the other one. Okay. So that's kind of neat. The road is working from there to here. It's probably a little too pronounced. And for my taste, I probably want to lighten that up a little bit. Okay. So it's starting to take some sort of finish shape, and I've got a little over 20 minutes. I'm going to go into the background mountains for a little bit because they're just a flat tone, and I'm going to add light to it because I remember I said that I thought that might be a little dark. So what I'll do, if that's the case, that's my dark. So I'm going to add light. The light gets a little warmer, a little greener, and you got to test it. Let's see how this first. So I'm going to go right here. Nope, not even close. Not even close. So I add a lot more white. Nope. Keep going. That's better. I'm just looking at the subtlety. I want to keep it as subtle as it is. I don't even want to show those white areas because they stand out way too much. If I'm going to put them in there, I'm going to put them in there much more of a subtle tone. Let me get back. Okay, that's shaping up okay. Whew. I don't want to paint the whole darn thing in and realize that I've wasted all that time at the wrong color, wrong value. So that's the advantage of standing back. You stand back and you can see if it's shaping up, because when I'm painting right on top of it like this, these are my guesses as to what is correct from this point of view. But since most paintings aren't viewed, from 2 feet away, it's kind of important that you get back enough where a painting would generally be viewed from. Hell, that works a lot better than I thought. Whew. Okay, I don't want to put that light in. I might add a light just by adding a little bit more of a light to that color that I was just using, and maybe put something right about here. I'll see if I like it too. I don't know. I might not like it when it's done. Okay, gives a little bit of depth. That's fine. I'm not going to do any more back there. I don't want to I want that to look good. There are some linear snaps that I'm going to need to put in. So the first thing I'm going to do is there's a tree, a little scrub tree, right off to the side of this. It's right here. That's exactly the kind of edge I wanted. That looks like a scrub tree. Some people probably do it and think it's too sloppy. You guys are all seeing this from a distance, so to speak. So things may look better in some respects. In other words, which is nice, because if the painting's not as good as it looks, I fooled you. Okay, so we're going to do some of the lights coming through, a little bit of piercing light, little white, yellow, green. Right about, let's say, put one here. There's a negative spaces, light between the tree trunks. Okay. Back, way it cuts back in there. Let me see if there's anything else. Okay, yeah, I see some little things I can do. Looks like there's a little deck at some point back behind. And this is the stuff that you want to do at the end to make the whole thing, fool people into thinking it's a house with, I see, there is a deck right here. Okay, now I want to clean up. Remember, I put those windows in and said I was going to clean them up. This is where color and value matching becomes a little bit more careful, because you got to be right. So I want to get the framing around the window and around this door. That looks to be okay. It feels like detail, thankfully. But the detail is not that clear, and it's a little lighter on this window, the frame. So I added more white to the same color I was just using. And it goes here. Step back. It makes the house feel completed. That's what we're doing here. And let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Light touch. Okay. I step back to see how it feels. Right in here, I'm losing some stuff I need to get in. Okay, we got about 15 minutes. I got to do a little bit more to the ground planes. Scuffing this up a little bit more. Hitting a little bit more light here and there, which I can see. Remember I said I'm going to need to do more to that. I'm going to go a little bit brighter with the, it's probably too bright, but I kind of like it. I think it almost needs it. It's too bright from reality, let's put it that way. But it may not be too bright for the painting. No, it isn't. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of the man-made stuff now, which are what I call linear snaps. It's the stuff you do at the very end of a painting, truthfully. I'm going to get rid of that. Clean my finger. I can use a ball stick instead of you can either put your finger down, you can use it something like this. There's a little bit of an edge on this part of the roof right there. Okay. Now, white, a lot of medium white, and right one. Oh, didn't mean to do that. So get rid of it. Get rid of it. That's what fingers are for. A little bit of this continuity. Continuity, whenever you hear me phrase, it means if something is showing in one area, meaning here, it needs to show all the way behind. So there we have it. It takes it behind. Get a little bit of, looks like architectural information. And on the 2 scrub trees that I did, now we come in with a little darker. Now I'm going to get the darker, this part. Just let's take it from here. Bring it across to here. I've got it going downhill, but you know what? It could be. It's not. But no one would know that. And y'all have to promise me not to tell. And interesting, a little shadow back there. And if I want to, I can bring a little bit more up in there. Now, I actually, because there's someone living here, I want to put some of the other architecture in. But before I do, we want to finish this tree up. There's a fallen tree right here. Comes down, looks to me to come down right about here. Okay. And there's some dead, this is the stuff that takes a little time and care. And I don't know if I'm going to do it as neat as I should, but I will get it in there. This is the tedious stuff. It's the least fun stuff to watch. But it starts to finish the whole thing off. It starts to make the whole thing work, is some of those man-made elements, so to speak, and little snaps of light. Like I see a little light on a couple of trunks back in here, so I can actually put just a little bit, not much. If you're better to underdo than overdo. Okay, a little bit on the top part of this is actually. And there's another post right here too, which I kind of like that. Get rid of those spots. So the whole thing is, to me, it's starting to take shape. Where are we at? We're at, let's see. Okay, almost 10 minutes. Notice how I keep extending the time? Okay, darker. So my ultramarine, and we're going to put this nice little post in right here. And a couple here. And some distant posts, not nowhere near as dark. So I've lightened up the color, just added some more of that green into it. We'll get a little bit of there, back in here. That value is just about right that I just used. Oh, not that value isn't. So let's go a little darker. And there's a shadow. Oh, I like that. Probably the best part of the whole damn painting. Get rid of that. It's not nice to say. There's another road right there too. I just saw it. Boy, those are the kind of things that you can really have fun with if you want to give yourself the time. Is you as you paint, you realize like there's a road right, or a trail. It may not even be a road. Right about there. And it just gives a movement. Now, I don't like that. It's not light enough. So let's do some adjustments. I don't want to do a whole bunch up here. Let's see what we got. Some darks. I want a little more green. And
You mentioned before how greens are always difficult. What do you do to?
don't make them real acidy. In other words, green and yellow is going to give you a super acidy green. So that's why you got to throw a lot of either Naples or ochre into it and hold off. If you want a real acidy green, fine, but don't put that in early. but I do want to lighten that up a little bit right there. So I'm going to take yellow, white, and I've already got green in the brush. I need some medium because it hasn't been sticky. It's real sticky. I can feel it, but I want to get brighter here. And here. Now, ideally, I should have done this earlier. You can do it later, but I always like to kind of get it working early. That works. Just standing back here, that works better. I can see it in here that I'm a little warm. Not that it couldn't be. Okay, it could be. In reality, it could be. I mean, just, more mustard could be coming up, but I want to go a little lighter right about here. This brush is perfect because I can make a stroke and just let it tickle its way in.
Laurel wants to know if you're keeping the foreground simple for any reason, or will you add some interest there?
I'm keeping the foreground simple. I would keep it simple anyway. I'm keeping primarily the reason I'm keeping it simple is time. It's just not that important compared to the rest of the painting.
So if you had more time, what would you do?
I do more of this, build it more. Just what I've already done. Just build it, like find a rhythm if I can. And the thing that I don't like that I'm doing now is I'm staying with the one color. There's a little more green. A little darker. Let's get some, not much, and warmer. I might hit some lights. I've only done the base tone and some darks, but I might want to use some lights back in there. I'm stood back. I don't like that right there. And what makes one artist different than another is you might find another area you don't like, and you would then deal with that area. I feel it's starting to have the right feel on this hillside, although I don't like the way it works its way into that area yet. So I might want to go back and rework that area a little bit. Oh, there's a great tree. I didn't put that in the background. Shoot. What do we got here? Oh, I have almost 3 minutes. We're going to put it right. I think it's necessary because it's all kind of simple back here. So we're going to put a few little lines in, and then we'll fuzz it because the edges and the branches are more like that. So we have that tree back in there. That helps. It balances. So this one by itself is looking a little weird. I do like something I added that I'm going to play with a little bit more when I had this road kind of disappear. So I'm going to have it pick up here again. I just don't want all these shapes to be similar. So now it's kind of nice because it feels like it's going in and out behind the trees. And you know how I learned that? Say how.
Oh.
Okay. I was painting in Tuscany, and I realized that sometimes just painting negative spaces behind distant trees gives a lot of depth to the piece. And so I literally learned that on location. I didn't learn that in the studio. Like I learned a lot of things just fussing around in the studio, but that one I literally figured out on location. Now I'm going to fuzz that brush. So I've got a kind of a tip on it like that. And the reason I got a tip on it like that is I don't want to paint lines. Let's look up in here, see if there's any more details I need to hit. Okay, couple little things. Number one, the edge of, clean my finger, this post. Couple of pieces of light on the railing, not much, not as bright as that, but maybe right about there. And a little bit of negative space. Some of these little things really help at the very end. Makes it feel like railing. Anything else? Oh, I don't have to, but is this little dark spot right in there on the, so we're gonna put that in. We're gonna put the dark right here. It's just an indication of more detail is all you're doing. Once you get it set up and everything feels correct, then you can go in and do as much of this as you have time for. But if it doesn't feel correct, you really waste your time doing this kind of stuff because you're polishing a turd. You're taking something that isn't working and you're adding, what's the other line? Lipstick on a pig. Same concept. It's like, but if you have it set up properly, boy, I put my finger down there and really messed up. But if you have it set up properly, it'll work. If you don't have it set up properly, it's not going to work. I think we're about there. We almost done, or we are done. And one last comment. There, answer a question that was put down. I'm going to take yellow and white into my green and a lot of medium and just show you what I might do back in here. Nope, more white. A little more yellow. And just add real subtle textural qualities. Top surfaces. And that's what I would do when you ask that question about what would I do in the foreground. I would just add more and more of this until it feels right. And that starts to do it. So you can kind of see what I'm hopefully I was referring to when I did that. But all in all, guys, that's my painting for today. And it's timing wise, I worked out a little bit better than I have in the past. Quality wise, they seem to come out okay. Every now and then one looks really crummy. Every now and then one looks not as good as I'd like it to. I should say that. I actually shouldn't say that. They always come out not as good as I would like them to. You always want them to be better. That's just the nature of us artists. Okay, that did it. So thank you, Scott. Thanks, Anna. Thanks everyone who's watching, everyone who may watch. Thank you. We'll do something different next week. I'm gonna do a sheep next week. Okay. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.